What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the eighth album by rapper Kanye West. Basically, this project is called Yay, and it came out in the late spring in 2018. So this is amongst like a series of albums that this project was amongst a series of albums that Kanye West put out on the Good Music label throughout 2018. There were some ones like Kid See Ghost, which was a collaboration album with Kid Cudi, and then there was like a Nas album and a Pusha T album, some of those type ones. Basically came out between like May of 2018 to about somewhere in June of 2018. I'd have to say in particular. This is a pretty low key. This is a relatively low key Kanye West album as far as that pitch can happen. After his hit album from 2016, within a relative Spotify type pitch and pitches like that, I had to say the Life of Pablo album that came out in like the spring of 2016. I had to say this one in particular was a little bit more low key, just within the sense of the affability behind it. It had some commercial appeal. Didn't recognize it as much. I kind of wasn't paying attention to music as much back in 2018 as far as the pitch can happen. Originally on this particular channel, I wasn't doing as much. I had some reviews I wanted to do, like the Jonathan Davis type album from 2018, some of those type ones, and like a hailstorm type album, some of those type pitches. But for the most part, I kind of took 2018 off. I do relatively remember this particular project. Another album from around this time that I didn't pay as much attention to was Eminem's Kamikaze, but I do remember at least the noise about it. This was kind of a big deal around the time just because it was a Kanye West album. He was dropping two albums in May of 2018. The Kid Cudi one was a big deal as well, just because the hype behind Kid Cudi and Kanye West, especially their team up, this having that chemistry. But kind of look after it was kind of, it felt like a project that kind of came and went as far as that pitch came went. There's only 7 songs on here, and there were only 2 singles, so it's just a relatively packed to go type Kanye West album, I'd have to say in particular. But it is a surprisingly baffling type one, just within the concept of the quality. I don't remember like the critic appeal of this particular project. I want to say that they liked it within a relative sense, but I kind of look after it. It just kind of, this album feels underappreciated nowadays, but I would say it's probably one of the more notable type ones, like the late 2010s type, where as tide started to shift to more 2010s trap and pitches like that. It's an interesting concept because Kanye does it a little bit on here. Maybe not as full blown, but at least the lead single, which is Yikes, is a pretty good example of kind of getting that on here. It's a relative good pitch to kind of have. It's a good pitch to kind of have Kanye West on some of that 2010s type trap to kind of see what he would do with it. But it's just kind of the concept. I feel like this is somewhat of like a trailblazing type album here, just within the aspect behind it. But it's also an album that sees Kanye West return to like his preppy type appeal of like the Graduation trilogy album days. That I'd say it definitely reminds me of Late Registration with a little bit of like Graduation, a little bit of College Dropout, just kind of that aspect. If you do miss that more backpacker Kanye from those particular days, like the mid 2000s, it's pretty good concept. It's definitely the most ruminating type one. I wasn't expecting that particular format for Kanye. This would have the same particular. It's kind of an aspect that I just didn't see coming as far as that particular kind of went, especially after the more kind of larger, especially like after the more larger scale type albums like Yeezus and Life of Pablo, as far as that particular pitch kind of went along with this. So this is a concept that just kind of had like a kind of compact kind of burst of energy. It's not a full blown classic, I'd have to say. It only has 7 songs. And if you don't like every single song, it kind of detracts from it. But I would have to say I do like Yeezus better than this particular album, but this is a good album. This is definitely a balanced, pretty album. Just over. This is a balanced and kind of inspired Kanye on here. That if it had more songs and more of these had been hits, this might have been one of Kanye's best, because it's definitely one of his better albums in recent times. I'd have to say. I can't confirm that full blown because I don't know a ton of his more recent projects. I still haven't listened to Life of Pablo, some of those type ones. I'm gonna get to probably Kids See Ghosts next as far as that kind of goes. But this is definitely some preppy kind of trap centric Kanye. Has some of that blue collar type appeal like his old Graduation trilogy type days, and it just has some of that just Starbucks kind of commerce and pitches like that. So this is a work centric type album. This Kanye more. If you like albums by, if you like songs by Kanye, like Heard Him Say and some of those type songs, can't really think of Touch the Sky, some of those type pitches from Kanye West. This is more on that particular aspect. It's just too bad that the promotion, I don't know why Kanye chose to make these albums so short as far as I particularly kind of went along with it, and why there wasn't kind of more promotion for it, but still we'll kind of get to it here. So the first single is Yikes. This is a pretty nice one. This is like a preppy kind of commercialized blue collar trap song, I'd have to say in particular. It's like a good trendy rendition of like some, this song's like a good trendy rendition. I would definitely have to feel like pretty contemporary to like the times. I would definitely feel like this is some basic day commerce, and I would feel like this is like a mild revving type song. It's interesting kind of get Kanye West on some trap type music. I'd have to say just a good concept for that, but this is kind of like blue collar type stuff, I'd have to say. So if you do like, if you like folks like NF, just within that relative sense, NF is pretty close to this sort of stuff that I was trying to commercialize like trap music to kind of make it more of a blue collar type fare. Not quite like in Future type territory or folks like that, Migos type territory. That's just kind of more edgy, kind of more after hours, kind of done with blue collar type fare. But it's just kind of the concept of trap music, just within a sense of the work shift and just kind of more standardized, just kind of Target and Starbucks type music, just within an aspect that I say is a good concept. Pretty preppy song, and I'd say just like the concept of it's Kanye West just on his more typical type fare, but it works pretty well. Pretty stock song by Kanye, I'd have to say. Do you like the concept of this particular one kind of getting it? Particularly one of his more noteworthy recent songs that just has a lot of contemporary appeal and pitches like that. So it's just a good concept, real trendy type one to kind of get here. Do you like some of this? It's a concept of Kanye that probably should have been realized more. I definitely think another song like this, especially a single that could have capitalized on this particular movement that he was trying to create with this, probably would have been pretty good. It's a very brief taste. Yikes is just a very brief taste of something that probably could have been realized more. Like I was saying, good concept for that. But All Mine is the second single. This is a nice one. This reminds me of NF's Perception. I would definitely have to feel like. This is another trendy kind of late 2010s makeshift of a song, I'd have to say in particular. It's like some contemporary Kanye. I would definitely feel like this is a pretty underappreciated song. This one's not quite as trap centric, but I feel like it's just a good concept. This is definitely some Starbucks type commerce. I would feel like in particular, just the concept, something that you would have heard out of like Fifth Harmony or folks like that. Charlie Puth, Wiz Khalifa, some of those type people like the mid late 2010s as far as that pitch kind of goes along with it. Just a good enough concept is something. It's interesting enough that Kanye West is trying to get to the radio back around these times because for the most part, even in my localized type areas and pitches like that, it just feels like most folks still do not play Kanye West past like the 2000s, past anything past like Heartless when he had problems with Taylor Swift. I mean, Gold Digger, Stronger, some of those type ones continue to get hits, but these are songs that, despite the fact that they were kind of top 10, top 15 type singles, just didn't really chart that heavily, at least within radio airplay. So this is kind of the concept. Kanye West kind of made some enemies just within the relative kind of scene of like radio airplay and just like the industry as far as that particular kind of went. Especially he kind of did that in a big way with 2016. I don't remember as full blown as to why that happened in 2016. Just is between the Taylor Swift beef and a lot of controversy that he had in 2016. I know he had a meltdown and went to the hospital in late 2016. Pitches like that is just kind of the concept, but he feels really composed here, and he just took it back to like the times. This feels like a song that could have been on like late registration or graduation, some of those type pitches. Just real kind of blue collar, Panera Bread type concept for Kanye here. So that kind of happens to be a thing. But yeah, there's 7 songs on this particular album, and out of those 7, I wound up recommending to you 5. So really, the only 2 songs I don't recommend on this album in some fashion are just I Thought About Killing You and Ghost Town. So 5 out of 7, I would have to say I Thought About Killing You. Decent song, has a little bit of track composure about it. It's pretty similar to All Mine, I'd have to say, and Yikes. It's pretty similar to All Mine and Yikes, I'd have to say. It's a decent concept about it, but it just took too long for this particular song to start up. It had about 2 minutes 10 seconds of talking. Probably should have just been more of like a song in that typical kind of format. Just was something that just took a little bit longer to start up than it probably needed. And then it had a beat switch up towards the end. I like the composition of the song when Kanye raps at the beginning of the part where he does rap on the song, but just kind of switched it up a bit, and it was just kind of amalgamated type one. It was just kind of like a more listening type fashion towards one when it was just not that melodic or kind of affable in terms of like just traverse and pitches like that, I'd have to say. Just kind of more food for thought. It's not like it's a horrible song, it's just kind of the concept that compared to like Yikes and All Mine and some of those type ones, I'd have to say like Wouldn't Leave, some of those type ones just doesn't have the same snap. And then Ghost Town was probably the song with the least appeal on this particular album, at least in my opinion. I'd say this is kind of like a gospel type song, just within a relatively ghostly type sense. This is kind of an awkward type one. I feel like I like the appeal of what Kanye was trying to do, is just have be a little bit more of like a forlorn type one with a little bit of like a different direction, a little bit more of like a thought-provoking type one, but it just didn't pull out the vibes as far as that particular kind of went. I feel like that's something that like Scarface or Nas would kind of do, some of those type pitches, or Tupac, some of those type folks, but it just didn't have the same kind of full-blown appeal. Just for this short package of a project, I think it probably needed better production to pull off this particular vibe, and that just wasn't the song to do it. But yeah, to talk about some of these on here, so basically Wouldn't Leave is a pretty nice one. This is like a vintage kind of ruminating Kanye from like late registration days. I would definitely feel like this is like a contemporary kind of Panera Bread type commute, I would definitely have to say. This definitely takes it back to Kanye West, like the 2000s type fare. This is a pretty nice one. This is pretty similar to All Mine, some of those type pitches, I'd have to suppose. There's at least 3 songs on this particular album that kind of do that. Another one that kind of does it like that is No Mistakes. Probably even Violent Crimes. Most of this particular album is just preppy kind of Kanye West. I feel like minus the song Yikes, which is the only, I would say minus the song Yikes, which is pretty much the only trap centric one on here that just has that relative blue collar type appeal and like a trap type sense, I'd have to suppose. It's just kind of the concept that these other type ones are just more in like the graduation type days, late registration, college dropout type days, I'd have to say. All Mine, Wouldn't Leave, Violent Crimes, No Mistakes are just the ones within that relative pitch. But Wouldn't Leave is just a particularly pretty calm type one to kind of get to some Starbucks type traverse. Violent Crimes is another one that's pretty similar to that one. It's like a composed kind of wintry makeshift brush of a song, I'd have to say in particular. It's like some throwback And the song is like some throwback kind of preppy Kanye. I'd have to say in particular, it's like a good day commerce. This is like a good day commerce song to kind of have and just grab some coffee and pitches like that. I'd have to say just good kind of brunch date pitches like that as far as that particular kind of has with it. It's relatively it's back to like Kanye West, more John Legend and Common type days. I'd have to say in particular, just a good concept, just a real affable type one, just for some ruminating, just within the standard blue collar and kind of wintry brush of some of that. Doesn't quite have like the ferocious bite or the relative, the preppy kind of ferocious bite of like yikes, some of that type pitch. But I would have to say it's pretty similar to like All Mine and Wouldn't Leave. And then I'd have to say that No Mistakes is another nice one. This is like a dreary kind of late day commerce of a song. I'd have to say in particular, this one reminds me of All of the Lights. I'd have to say from Kanye's 2010 album. My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, I'd have to say. And this one's like a more hazy kind of vintage ruminate Kanye, I'd have to say. Just a good concept for that. So it's just kind of the pitch behind it. You just get some throwback, you get some nostalgic type vibes of vintage Kanye West, I'd have to say in particular. It's just a bite-sized kind of album here. It's just kind of the concept. I still question why Kanye made this like such a small helping of his particular hits off this particular album. I mean, it's a good album. I feel like it's definitely above average. It's definitely a solid enough. I'm going to go ahead and give this album, just to say the score about this particular album, I'm going to give this album like an 8.25 out of 10. I feel like the appeal is on here, but when you don't like every single song out of 7 songs, it just detracts from the score. If I thought about Killing You had just not had the beat switch up and it just had less talking time at the beginning, that probably would have been the 6th song, and then it probably would have gotten like a 9.25 out of 10, I'd have to say. But it's kind of the concept. It's just a real snappy type one, although I do feel like Yeezus is probably the more realized type version of doing like a short and sweet type album. That one just nailed a little bit better. But this is definitely like a blue collar burst of energy. I just feel like the songs on this particular album have that blue collar type bite and overall type appeal. And just kind of getting Kanye West back on like his preppy type appeal that he had in like the Gold Digger and Heard Him Say type days, and some of the ones like All Falls Down, some of those type pitches from like the Graduation trilogy days, I'd say. So it's a good concept to get some vintage Kanye here. It's a good concept to get some vintage Kanye here. I'd say for all the folks that complain about Kanye in the recent times, anything past like 2013 or 2016, I feel like this is an inspired Kanye that proves otherwise. It's just a relatively short project. Not every single song's a hitter, but I definitely feel like there's more hits than misses on this particular project. Definitely one of his better times. Definitely one of his better albums in recent times, despite the controversy. The social score, I'm going to go ahead and give the social score like a 7.75 though out of 10. I kind of feel like there's some songs on here. There definitely need to be another song like Yikes, I would have to say. Probably another one like All Mine as well. I feel like at least the other songs that I recommend on here has some relative blue collar type fashion for like Panera Bread and Starbucks and Target type commerce. I would have to say it's just kind of the concept of like a more 2010s, late 2010s preppy type atmosphere, just within a blue collar type sense of workship. I just look after it. They probably need. I just think the trap centric type stuff with Yikes just need to be more realized on here. This was one that just didn't quite have the concept of really as full blown as it needed to. I feel like that was a good concept, but something that probably would have needed more appeal. There just wasn't enough quantity on this particular product. This kind of thing about it. It's just, it's a good taste of an album, but it just didn't have like the. This is kind of. It's one that leaves you hungry a little bit. I'd have to say it's kind of the concept about it, but for the most part, it's quality. In terms of the future, like Kanye West is supposedly working on Vultures 2. He put out Vultures in like the early. Kanye West and Ty Dolla $ign put out Vultures 1 in early 2024, so it's a good pitch. Originally, there were going to be 3 of these. We'll have to see what happens with it, but Vultures 2 is supposedly on the way. I know Kanye West has at least dropped the cover art and pitches like that. He's held some listening parties for it, so we'll have to see what happens with it. But this is a pretty inspired Kanye West album here. It's overlooked nowadays. I'd say it's kind of one for some good blue collar type fare and like a wintry type brush. Good for like some of that just standard type commerce, just for like day fare and pitches like that, just amongst like the makeshift workship type fare, and that's a pretty good concept. Has some inspired bits on here. It's kind of a relatively trailblazing type project. It's a kind of a niche Kanye that would like to be. It's kind of a niche Kanye that could probably be done again, I'd have to suppose, but this is a pretty inspired project here, and it is recommendable enough, just despite the fact of its lack of turn up.